Hello everyone, today we're going to jump right into our projects. I'm using the Duncan Hines Devil's Food Cake Mix. So today's project is I just came up with an idea for a spooky themed cake. I'm throwing a costume party later today and really don't have a lot of instruction other than what's on the back of the cake box, and I'm just kind of experimenting with trying to get what's in my head on a plate. So I put in 1/3 cup vegetable oil with 1 cup water and 3 large eggs, just like it says so on the back of the Duncan Hines box. And really, baking to me is very much a mad science experiment. I am by no means a baker or very good at it. I've never poisoned anyone, so we can consider that a success. Right here you see me mixing in the cake mix really well and kind of wishing I had a hand mixer instead of just my handy dandy wooden spoon. I don't have a very well equipped kitchen. I am a starving college kid, so maybe for Christmas this year I will get a hand mixer. But really just mixing that together and making it look as smooth as possible. So we just keep mixing and mixing. My baking strategy is definitely experimental. I usually end up with huge messes in the kitchen and a very intimidating pile of dishes in the sink. I find baking to be very relaxing, even though it tends to be a huge mess. I enjoy the creative aspect of it. Like I said before, I have an idea in my head of what I want my finished product to be. And even though I usually never end up with that finished product, I very much enjoy the process and the problem solving. When you dive into a project with no real idea what you're doing, you end up with a lot of little bumps in the road, and so problem solving for that is always very, very interesting on my part. Usually it makes a bigger mess. Here we see my lovely assistant, Zoe, coming into frame. She had to see what was happening in the kitchen, and she's just giving me a lot of good tips on baking, and we always really appreciate her input. Now it's time to move to our next step. For a cake pan, I have my Betty Crocker Bake set. Now, I don't think they make these anymore, but I did buy these used off Amazon. I got it for around $40. I really, really love it because it makes just my cakes a little more interesting. The strategy here is I didn't have any cooking spray left in my kitchen, and I didn't realize that before I went ahead and started. So I decided to just melt some butter in the microwave and rub it around the inside. And here I'm realizing that I maybe melted it a little too much because for the most part it's pure liquid and it is getting just everywhere. So in order to problem solve this, I take a paper towel and I'm rubbing the inside of the pan, kind of spreading everything around and also getting that paper towel just soaked in butter. And so now that the paper towel is soaked in butter, I can use it on the rest of the pieces that more cake batter are going to go into or to touch. Again, we have a visit from Zoe. And then we go right into filling the cake pan. There is a fill line on the inside of the cake pan, so I'm filling to that line. Cleaning up after myself to try to help. Here I'm putting in the fill insert and locking it into place. Off camera, I did have to make another batch of the cake batter to put in the bottom cake pan. That will be the bottom half of the cake later on. That bottom half is probably going to bake for about 20 to 25 minutes, and then adding an extra 10 to 15 minutes for the fill insert, depending on how much batter is in the fill insert. Now we're going to work on our frosting. So obviously for Halloween I have an idea of what I want my frosting to look like, and I really wanted to experiment with colors. So I have some vanilla frosting, and I bought a pack of gel food dye, and I'm using that to turn my vanilla frosting as orange as I can possibly get it. I really want it to look like a pumpkin, so I'm just gonna use pretty much all of the food coloring to get the orange as saturated as possible to get it to resemble a pumpkin. Definitely trying to hone in on some spooky vibes. After I mixed the orange icing, I did mix a black and a green to go along with it for decorating. And now we're going in and checking our cakes. So I just take a toothpick and I just poke around the cake, and if the toothpick comes out clean, I know that we've got a good, well done cake, so I can take those right out of the oven. Now here's me struggling. I've burned myself one too many times, so I'm actually a little afraid of ovens. So I'm kind of hurting my cake a little bit, but you know, we're just doing the best we can. So I'm checking the bigger cake now, and it's coming out clean. I don't think I had to keep it in very much longer past the bottom half, and so I'm taking that out of the oven. Please ignore how messy my stovetop has gotten. So here's me taking off the fill insert. I let the cakes cool for about an hour before I took off the fill insert, and now we have this beautiful dome shape inside of our cake. A little cheat I have for cooling off my cakes is I put them inside the freezer for about 30 minutes. So here's me putting them in my freezer, and they came out of the freezer, they were perfectly cooled off and ready to start icing. So here's what I'm going to be filling the middle of my cake with. The idea is when my guests for the party tonight cut into the cake, it's kind of like their own jack-o'-lantern candy bucket. So they're gonna cut in and all this candy spills out. So like a trick-or-treating-esque pumpkin. So I'm filling the inside of the cake with as thin of a layer as I can of the orange icing, just to kind of make sure the icing spreads evenly on the cake. Everybody gets a bite of icing. So I fill that all around the edge. It's, yes, very messy, but we love that. So we're just gonna fill it up and make all the M&Ms level with the cake. And now I'm trying to level out the bottom half of the cake, but then I decided I didn't really want to waste that part of the cake, and I didn't want to eat it either because I'd been eating Halloween candy all day. And now I'm slamming the bottom half of the cake, trying to get it to come out of the pan. So now we're going to work on getting ready to decorate. Recently I purchased an icing gun, and I was really excited to use this. It comes with lots of different icing tips, and I was hoping it would make things a little less messy. My icing was a little runny. I don't really know how that came. Maybe I left it out of the fridge for a little too long. But as I put the icing inside of the icing gun, I realized that it was leaking out the other end because I pretty much had, I was using the open tip for the icing gun, and so this is me realizing it was just kind of falling out all over the stovetop. So definitely having to be aware that it was all coming out. And now I've flipped the cake onto the cake plate. Very, very beautiful, love it. Here's me spreading the orange icing that'll give it that pumpkin feel. The cake is falling apart and mixing in with the icing. and kind of just kept going. You can see the little particles of chocolate cake in the icing. I was telling my guests that it just came right out of the pumpkin patch, so you know it had a little dirt on it, a little protein. Then I piped the black icing around the edge. I kind of ran out towards the back, and that's why we have that kind of ugly straight line, but that's fine. When we put it out on the table, we're just gonna put that facing the back. I realize this kind of looks like a goth carrot. I'm very, very proud. I'm very proud about how this turned out. I didn't poison anybody. Very successful party overall. I decided to add a little snapshot of all my friends. And thank you for coming along with me on this journey, and I hope you guys have a very happy Halloween.